Welcome. Welcome if you're new, and if you're not new, welcome to my new office. This has been months in the making. I'm so excited to finally be up here. We literally just moved my desk up last night. And yeah, I'm really liking it so far. We'll see how it goes next week when I actually have to work in here, but I'm very excited. All right, today I'm going to film an Unpopular Opinions video, which is one that has been requested a few times over the last few months. I used to do these semi-regularly and I haven't done one in a while. So I thought it was time. If that sounds like fun to you, then stick around. And by all means, you probably will disagree with things that I say in this video, and that's totally okay. Remember that perfume is a very personal experience. Everybody gets different things from fragrances. Everyone wants different things from fragrances. So just remember that if I don't like something, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not good. And my opinion is no more valid than yours. So if you love something that I'm about to talk about on this video, then please continue to love it, continue to wear it. That's what it's all about. It's all about wearing what you love and feeling good about it. Let's get into the video. Okay, so first up, we have a fragrance that actually was on my wish list not too long ago. I went to an event for this particular brand late last year, and I tried a lot of their fragrances, and I thought it was this one that I could smell on my arm after the event and was thinking I really liked it. But obviously it wasn't, because it's on this list. So let's get into it. This is Possibilities by La Perla. Now on paper, this opens quite green, a little bit sweet and a little bit tart. The opening is actually very refreshing, I think. There is a hint of darkness to this as well, like a dark fruit, coupled with just a hint, I think, of some kind of musk. And the combination of that reminds me of the infamous pink musk sticks, but instead of being pink, they'd be more like a dark purple. So it doesn't smell quite as bright and, for want of a better word, innocent as a pink musk stick. But really what that means is it smells a little bit like it has a dark berry or a dark fruit in it. I feel like the woody notes in here are also quite dark. I get the image of a really dark timber, but it doesn't smell like real wood, if you know what I mean. It doesn't smell like you're sitting amongst timber furniture, but there is definitely a woodiness to it. Look, overall, there are a lot of things to like about this scent profile, but there are just a couple of things that I personally just can't get past. The first thing, and probably the most dominant thing for me that I can't get past, is the fact that this is very sharp, piercing and screechy to me, and it feels like somebody has plunged an ice pick through my frontal lobe. It's that sharp. On some people that might just come off as being really fresh and zesty, but on me it kind of feels almost painful. The second thing is that there is something in here that to me is reminiscent of the smell of engine oil. Not petrol, engine oil. You know, that black, slick, hydrocarbony smell, and I don't appreciate it. So there you go. This one was on my wish list not too long ago, and after sampling it more thoroughly, I have decided that it is a hard no for me. Next, we have Piano Santal by L'Orchestre Perfumes. Now, I have a 5ml decant of this. I went in straight for the bigger decant instead of just getting a sample. I was so positive that I was going to really enjoy this fragrance. And in fact, I do really enjoy elements of this fragrance. It opens with a really beautiful, musky, slightly lactonic sandalwood note. And I really, really enjoy that opening, and how it smells on paper is beautiful. But what made this a no for me was the fact that once it's on my skin, it turns extremely sour. And I'm not talking, just slightly sour. I'm talking really sour. And I actually wondered if there was a civet note in here that had maybe been overdosed or something, because it's kind of a little bit pissy. I also think I get a bit of a leathery accord in here, particularly once it's on my skin, and there was no leather or suede note or anything listed that I could see. So I'm not sure where that's coming from, but it did sort of lean a little bit leathery to me, which isn't so bad in and of itself, but coupled with that sourness, oh, it was a hard no. It was so bad, and this hasn't happened to me much recently, but it was so bad that it was actually a complete scrubber for me. I had to go and try and scrub it off. It kind of smelled to me like my cat had peed on my arm or something. It was just unpleasant. And after having experienced that, I did start, reading up on all the comments, and there does seem to be two camps of people on this fragrance. One, the first camp being the people who find this to be really beautiful and really lovely, and they obviously get a lot more of that gorgeous opening that I really like about this. But then there's the other camp where it turns sour, and I'm not the only one that experienced that. So that kind of makes me feel better, because I know this is a really popular perfume and the people who love it really, really love it. So anyway, that was Piano Santal by L'Orchestre Parfums. Okay, next up, this is going to be unpopular. Next up we have Blanche Bete, which is another musky, lactonic, this time gourmand scent instead of sandalwood. I actually don't hate this. I do find it incredibly addictive, which is why I ultimately upgraded to a 5ml decant. I did start with a sample, and by the time I got through the sample, I was still on the fence. I couldn't quite make up my mind whether or not I liked it or not. So I bought a 5ml decant, and there are definitely elements of this fragrance that I love. I think it actually is a really beautiful fragrance, but I can't wear it. And the reason is because offsetting that lactonic, creamy, musky element of this fragrance is a really super dry, powdery element that probably is coming from things like a cacao note, incense, and tonka. So it's very, very powdery and dry on the one hand, but sort of creamy and lactonic and musky on the other. So it's like those two things are clashing a little bit for me. It's super interesting, and admittedly, when I was sampling this fairly heavily, it was summer here in Brisbane. And I think that really powdery aspect just was too much for the heat. It just choked me out. Now that it's cooling down, I am intending to revisit this, but I'm still not convinced it's going to work for me in the cooler months. The reason being is that even though it is very addictive, that milky aspect is very, very sweet. Imagine warming some milk on the stove and then adding some sugar to it, brown sugar specifically, and maybe a little bit of white chocolate as well. White chocolate, because there is sort of like almost a caramelly aspect to this fragrance that feels light. It doesn't feel like it comes from a very dark element. So, there is definitely a chocolatey sort of bent to it as well. So the chocolate note doesn't feel dark to me. It feels more creamy. So I tend to imagine in my mind white chocolate. So you've got this very sweet, warm milk, and then you dump a load of raw cacao or maybe some powdered sugar on top, and maybe the lid of the shaker comes off, and you literally end up with an overload of this really dry powderiness over the top of the milk. I can definitely see why some people absolutely love this fragrance, and I understand why it has received the level of attention that it has. I too find it quite addictive, but I also find it way too much. And because it has such good staying power as well, I just ultimately end up feeling nauseous after an hour or two. At the very least, it's definitely not a warm weather appropriate fragrance, in my opinion. And if you are from a hot climate and intending to blind buy this because it's been talked up so much, just be cautious, because if you live in hot weather, particularly hot, humid weather, this can really get to be too much very quickly. So that is Blanche Bete. Okay, so the next one is Fleur Narcotique by Ex Nihilo. I feel like I'm really hitting all the big ones today, which which might be upsetting to some people. So Ex Nihilo is not readily available to us here in Australia. You can only order it from, I think the only place we can order it from is actually Selfridges, because Selfridges ships globally. And so it took a while for me to actually get my hands on a sample, because I wasn't obviously prepared to blind buy the entire bottle, and you can't buy samples from Selfridges. So somebody very kindly sold me a little sample of this. I was very keen to chase down this sample because I'd heard so many good things about it. And as you know, well, you may not know if you haven't been watching my videos. If you have seen some of my videos, then you'll know that I am definitely going through a phase of really enjoying fresh floral fragrances, which is quite a departure from the types of fragrances that I have historically enjoyed. So I was really excited to try this. And I mean, it is actually really a gorgeous fragrance. I mean, there's jasmine and peony and orange blossom as the floral elements, all ones that I love, by the way. It's romantic and feminine and clean and fresh. There's a little bit of fruitiness in the top and a hint of musk as well. It's very bright. However, in the opening and through to the mid, I was sort of getting what I thought was a tea note. And I don't dislike tea notes at all. In fact, I really love tea notes in fragrances. But there are certain types of tea, especially herbal teas that are fruity, that I don't like the smell of, because they smell very sharp to me and very astringent. And I find that really difficult. So what I'm getting at is that the tea note in here, if it is actually a tea note, and I don't know if it is or not, I mean, it certainly isn't listed, but the sensations that I'm getting from smelling it remind me of the types of smells of those sorts of teas that I don't enjoy smelling in real life. So I'm not sure if it's actually the musk that's doing that. It could be, because some synthetic musks to me are just really, really sharp and piercing, and I can't really handle them very well. Or it could be this transparent wood note that they cite on their website, which I don't actually know what that is, but I guess what they're trying to describe, they're just trying to describe a wood note that is very transparent. It's not too heavy, because that is the nature of this fragrance. It's very airy, and it's like a very light veil that packs a punch. And I guess coupling that with the fact that it is a very potent, strong fragrance that projects like a mother, it's just too much for me. And I just know that if I was to do a full wear of it, I would end up with probably a raging headache. And even just spritzing this on the back of my hand to sample it was even then starting to cause a bit of a headachy vibe for me. So it is super, super strong, this stuff. In the dry down, it becomes more musky and fruity and a bit softer, and I really quite enjoyed that element of it. But I do think that sharpness in the opening and into the mid would just be way too much for me to be able to handle wearing it, and it would probably detract from the enjoyment of the dry down. It's such a shame, because it actually is a really beautiful scent profile, and if you are in the market for a slightly sweet, fresh, crisp floral fragrance, then this is definitely one worth checking out, particularly if you're in the Northern Hemisphere and you're coming into the summer months. Although, having said that, this stuff is so strong, I think you could totally wear it in winter as well, and it would definitely hold up even in the cold weather. So anyway, that was Fleur Narcotique. I'm a bit sad that this one did not work out for me. Next up, we have Valaya by Parfums de Marly. I was actually quite excited about this release, because there aren't a lot of Parfums de Marly fragrances that I really get along with, but this one sounded like it would be up my alley, particularly with the types of fragrances that I'm enjoying at the moment. I think at some point I had read that this was an aldehydic floral musk, and immediately that brought to mind another fragrance that I really, really love, and that is Intense Musk by Nicolai Parfums. And to me, that is a really stunning fragrance. So I thought this might end up being in a similar vein to that fragrance, only that this one might be a little bit lighter and more airy and perhaps a little bit more approachable than Intense Musk. This opens with some really pretty light fruity notes, I think mostly citrus for me, which are all embedded into a really ethereal muskiness. The florals here are very clean and they definitely impart a whiteness, which also really aligns with the marketing for this fragrance. There is orange blossom listed in this fragrance, but if you're not a fan of orange blossom, you might still find it worthwhile to try this, because to me, I get more lily of the valley than orange blossom in the floral notes. The florals are ultimately balanced quite nicely against earthy and woody notes like vetiver and the proprietary synthetic note of Akigala wood. That's not to say that this is a woody or earthy fragrance though, but I do feel that those notes temper the more sweeter elements of this fragrance. It borders just slightly on a laundry clean musk, but it's not so laundry clean that you feel like you've shoved your face into a vat of fabric softener. However, after saying all of that, there is one element of this fragrance that I just don't get along with. I don't actually know what it is. There is a note in here. I don't know if it's a molecular note or something like ambroxan maybe, but it's an element that kind of burns my nose, and it's quite sharp and it's extremely headache inducing for me. I sampled this fragrance 3 times on skin over the course of a couple of weeks, and every time I put it on, just one spritz on my hand and I would end up with a raging headache. So I'm no longer testing it on skin at all. Whatever it is that's doing that, it feels like one of those notes that is added to a fragrance purely for the purpose of making it loud, making it jump off the skin and project. I do get it a lot in fragrances that are beast mode, and I also got it in other Parfums de Marly fragrances, and particularly Athalia is one that comes to mind. I actually really enjoyed the scent profile of Athalia, but this element of it sort of being nose burny and really loud and headache inducing just didn't work for me. It's kind of hard to explain, but I feel like I'm very sensitive to it and it's very pungent to me. But obviously not everyone has this reaction, because a lot of people really love those kinds of fragrances. So this is just purely a personal thing to me. It's a shame, because I otherwise really would have loved this fragrance. That soft, ethereal, floral, juicy opening, which was just such a happy vibe. But unfortunately, that really pungent, loud, screechy note just ruins it for me, and it doesn't work. And for that reason, it also just doesn't hold a candle to my beloved Intense Musk by Nicolai Parfums. Although, even though they're both sort of aldehydic floral musk fragrances, they serve a completely different demographic. Valaya is much sweeter and innocent and playful, whereas Intense Musk is more composed, sophisticated, and a little bit more serious. I do also get some similarities between this and Fleur Narcotique, which I just talked about, but I find Fleur Narcotique overall to be more floral and fruity, whereas with Valaya, the fruity notes do eventually die down and you're left with a laundry clean floral musk. So that's all I really want to say about it. Again, I can understand why some people really love this one. It is pretty and it does have really good staying power, as evidenced by the fact that I really tried to get it off me and I could not. But it is just one of those fragrances that for a lot of people would be a very pleasant wear and they would feel very clean and fresh. So one to keep in mind if you want that kind of fragrance, but I think there are others on the market that probably serve the same purpose for a lot lower price tag and don't have that headache-inducing, pungent, synthetic aspect to it. Bouquet Encore. Yep. I'm really doing it today, aren't I? Again, I was very excited to get a sample of this because I'd heard so many great things about it. Tuberose and jasmine, what's not to love if you're a white floral fragrance lover? And indeed, I have enjoyed wearing this sample. But when I first spritzed this on, my immediate impression was that it smelled like something that I had been sampling or wearing back in 2019. I was instantly transported back to the bedroom of the house that we were living in, and I remember I had all these little sort of samples and decants sitting on top of my dresser, and I remember distinctly being at the dresser and smelling something like this. Then as this dries down, it becomes much more peppery. And it gets sort of a darkness to it, like a dark fruit. And again, I sort of feel like I'm getting black currant from it. I feel like I'm getting black currant from a lot of things lately. And as it keeps developing like that, it actually starts to resemble another fragrance that I just talked about today, and that is Possibilities by La Perla. It doesn't smell exactly the same, but there is very strong similarities. I would say that in comparison to that, this one has a more aromatic edge to it, which I think is actually quite a redeeming feature of this fragrance. I also don't think that this one is as piercing and screechy as Possibilities was on my skin. This one sort of has a bit more of an ethereal quality to it. As it dries down further, the pepperiness settles a little bit and you are left with a pretty but sweet white floral with some fruity elements, in addition to some kind of woody note that is a little bit sharp, but again, not as piercing as it was in Possibilities. Overall, I didn't dislike this fragrance. I actually found it quite pleasant to wear, but I guess I just found myself feeling a little bit ambivalent towards it. And I think that's just solely due to the fact that my expectations of it were very, very high going into sampling it. And I just don't feel like it lived up to the level of appreciation that most other people have for it. I would say that if you liked Possibilities but you found it too shrieky and piercing and sharp for your taste, then this one might be worth a go, because again, it is softer and it has some more interesting elements to it, I think. This is my opinion, and as uneducated as it may be, I can't deny that it's my opinion. So, all right. That's it for my Unpopular Opinions video. I'm going to stop it there before people start coming after me with pitchforks. And all I can say is I'm sorry. I'm sorry that these didn't work for me. I genuinely went into sampling a lot of these perfumes wanting them to be winners for me, but not every perfume can work out for everybody. The silver lining for me is that it's saved me some money, maybe. Anyway, please do share below if you've tried any of these fragrances, if you own any of these fragrances, and what you think of them. And well, obviously if you own them, you must like them. And let me know if there's anything that you've been sampling lately which you were anticipating you would love and ultimately did not like, and why. All right, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.